All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast, your podcast for the outdoor world. My name is Walt, and I am joined by my co-host Chase, and we are sitting within a month of deer season. I think that's right. You're within a month now too, correct?
Yes, yep. I'm just at that month mark right now.
Yeah, it's getting close, dude.
Yeah, man, I am itching to get out in the woods. Actually went on a scouting mission. I actually met up with a listener of the show today on a piece of public that we both hunt. Brandon Ogden. Yeah, him and I had been like chatting back and forth through text messaging because we both he realized that I was going to be hunting that public, so we've been going back and forth for probably a couple of weeks now. And he happened to be up and was going to be scouting this week, so I got out there and met up with him, and it was cool to meet him, and we did some scouting together, so it was awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. He has been a fan of the podcast for quite some time. He and I have talked, I'd have to say, off and on for quite some time, so I'm thrilled that you got to meet up with him. Man, you know, you benefit from being in the middle of the state, and I am envious of that because you get to meet up with all the people down there.
Yeah, man, that's been at least one of the cool things for me because I've gotten to go fishing with some people that listen to the show. Met up with some people to go scouting. I always like meeting listeners of the show, but I kind of look at them like, well, why do you listen to me? But hey, but that's kind of cool, and it's just good to get some other people's perspective in the state on how they hunt the public land down here. I'm not an expert by any means, so it's always kind of good to go back and forth with somebody. And he's got a lot of more experience on that piece of public than I do. It's been a good little relationship.
Yeah, for sure. That's always been the core reason why you and I have done this. The relationships, the knowledge and the relationships have always made this worthwhile. And if anybody on the Panhandle wants to hang out and make Chase jealous, I'm wide open.
Yeah, man. And we got our Patreon group.
Yeah,
they're great, and we have quite a few guys in Florida. I mean, you got to meet Craig Kroom at the tethered event.
Yeah.
And there's several other guys down in the Central Florida region. So, and they're kind of always kind of asking us like, hey, if you guys ever get down here, I'll meet up with you and scout and things like that. So it's just great to have that kind of resource. And that was kind of one of the cool things that I always kind of envision with the podcast is just to make connections with people and to get more experiences than just the little bubble that you're currently in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's ultimately what makes the early mornings editing or the late nights recording and editing. I mean, it makes it all worthwhile, man. It's a good time. But, you know, you mentioned our little Patreon group. It grew by 2 members since the last time we recorded. So we've got some shout-outs to do, dude. You ready?
Yep.
All right. So Steve Whittam out of Florida, he joined recently. I appreciate you, dude. And then longtime listener, kind of creepy guy in the corner lurking, Charles Headland joined this year from Pennsylvania. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, our brother from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so that's it. You know, he keeps inviting us to come up to PA. That might have to be like, that's got to be on the short list, I think, at this point for like out of state CT like stamped official trips because we got to show him how easy it is to kill a deer up there.
Yeah, man. He was kind of upset with our last podcast that we didn't mention PA as a destination state to go to, but I know a lot about the PA hunting culture and things like that, so I really do want to get up there at some point, but I mean, this year I'm kind of weighing, it's like, do I go to Iowa or do I go to PA? Iowa or
right.
PA? I mean, can only go so many places, but I think we're hoping at some point to kind of do like a central meetup for a lot of us creators. That way we can all kind of get together and have a good time out in the woods together.
Yeah, no, and I hope we can put that together for next fall or turkey season because we've made some awesome connections, like we said, and I think that whatever comes out of that is just going to be monstrously entertaining and fun for everybody. So this week, also monstrously entertaining and fun for everybody, we sat down with Nick Chandler, You may know him as Heart of Florida Outdoors. And we took one last dive into the Florida whitetail woods right before we start, broadening our seasons across the board. His season's about to kick off, and he does an excellent job of navigating the public quota system in Central Florida, and he dropped some really good, insightful tidbits for everybody.
Yeah, he did. We kind of had a cancellation for the podcast this week, and he's been a good buddy of ours. He was in the Yakin for Bass Challenge. I got to meet him through that, and I believe he's been on Parker's podcast last year, and I knew that he really capitalizes on the quota hunts here in Florida. For those not familiar with those, they're generally hunts that you have to apply for. Sometimes you got to build up preference points for them. You get awarded the status to be able to hunt that hunt, and it may just be for a 3 to 5 or 7 day window. So,
sure.
And you can't really pick. You can't pick and choose what days you're going to go. You're normally just like, okay, I'm going to go those 3 days. And he's a guy last year that had a ton of success being able to do that. So it was kind of good to have him on. For a lot of our listeners who are looking at getting into the quota system or are already in the quota system on, hey, how do I capitalize in a 3 to 5 day hunt in an area where I can't maybe have as much boots on the ground scouting?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things I want to get better at is going on some of these hunts where I dedicate a solid 3 to 4 days into hunting, and I think Nick really gave everybody a good outline as to how to attack places that you may have familiarity with and areas you may not. So I know this is going to be beneficial to a little bit of everybody, I think. I think there's something everybody can take away from this. So with that being said, why don't we get everybody to the episode?
Let's do it.
All right, everybody, we are on the phone with a Florida legend, the guy who put Florida on the map, Nick Chandler. Dude, what's going on, man?
Man, I appreciate it. I don't really take the honor of a legend at 30 years old, but I really appreciate the respect there. I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Oh, better than I deserve, man. Better than I deserve. But, I'm joking there. You and I, we're friends. We talk dang near on a daily basis through Marco Polo. We were able to link up during the saddle event, which is where you and I formally met. You and Chase got to meet on a fishing trip. And, dude, you're one of those guys who lives and breathes Florida deer hunting, and couldn't think of a better dude to kind of talk about the quota system that this state has going on. It's kind of a weird thing, but before we get into that, why don't you give everybody the elevator pitch as to who Nick is?
Yeah, like I said, I'm Nick Chandler. I am from Central Florida. Hail from a little town called Umatilla, Florida, which is about as central as it gets. I kind of grew up hunting. Or I say kind of, but I was more than less like from birth. I've always been in the woods. I grew up dog hunting with a bunch of family members of mine, dad, grandpa, all that stuff, aunts, uncles. Just kind of moved my way into still hunting with my dad as years went on, and just kind of got more competitive as I got older. I kind of got out of it for about 6 years, but it just, once family settled down and, had kids and stuff like that, I just took the edge and went with it, man. I can't think of anything else any day of the week, any day of the year, period. But I'm sure y'all seem to be about the same.
Hunting Florida comes with its challenges, Nick. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the area of Florida? Better yet, where in Florida is Umatilla?
It is about 5 to 10 minutes just north of Eustis or Mount Dora area, which is about an hour north of Umatilla, right on the outskirts of the Ocala National Forest.
Gotcha. So we're talking like piney flats with scrub oaks, or?
Yeah, around here. I don't know if anybody might be familiar with Paisley, but it's just on the outskirts of Ocala. There's a lot of scrubs, a little bit of swamp throughout, but a lot of pines. But the management areas I hunt are quite a bit different, but that's just what's close here to home.
I got you. So my curiosity, it is piqued with you because pine flats with scrub oaks and some swamps. What do you key in on when you're in that area? If you had to sum up your deer hunting strategy, what would it be?
Well, number one, I try to focus in on where the normal crowd doesn't go, is overlooked areas and thicker areas. I would say just a lot of scouting year round. Just trying to figure out exactly where the deer are. But finding areas where people normally do not frequent has been a big deal for me, and especially getting into the mobile hunting game, saddle hunting and stuff like that. You can put yourself in a lot better situations. Whereas, pretty much you find somewhere where you can't put a climber, usually you're going to find deer. At least around here, it's been that way. I mean, if you can't figure out deer movement, just find where the hunters aren't, and usually you can find the deer. But just finding the sign and the hunter sign and stuff has been a pretty big deal for me.
All right. So what kind of deer sign are you looking for then?
That all depends. Mostly early season, like this time of year, I'm going out and I'm looking for tracks. I'm trying to figure out where deer are frequent and, when they're not bothered, because usually, your first couple weekends, they're still on the same pattern. They're not jumped around and everything from everybody being in the woods as much. So I try to find the tracks where they're crossing and try to kind of figure it out from there, try to find where I think, the path of least resistance from there on out, from where the tracks are going. Food sources, not just any food sources. I really don't pay a lot of attention to acorns because there are so many oak trees around here. It's kind of hard to pinpoint them. At least I found it that way. I mean, I'm sure some people might know a lot more than me. But I try to key on the food sources there's not as much of them that they, frequent more than others, like persimmons. I'm sure y'all know a lot about persimmons from what we've talked about before, but and it's specific persimmon trees. I found a little key to finding those as well. As the season progresses, as they ripen, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this, but it's something that I kind of got turned on to last year. Specific persimmon patches that I found had cobwebs on them. I don't know if you guys have you ever noticed that at all or not?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I was out scouting today, and there was a bunch. I found a group of persimmons that had some fruit, and there were cobwebs kind of all over them.
Exactly. The ones that I find with the cobwebs, obviously the bugs like them. The deer seem to key in on those more than others. Because there has been persimmon trees that I've hunted, and even family members have hunted and never seen a deer. They see deer walk right past them, not even touch them. As if just like they say with acorns, they like certain trees better than others. I find that there's certain persimmon trees they like better than others. A lot of people think they're all the same, but, there's a difference to that.
Can you think back to, or Chase, actually, since you just recently did it, what was the bark? What color was the bark on the persimmons that you found? Was it darker or lighter?
It was a little bit darker than like your typical light gray,
right?
That I've seen on the persimmons. These persimmons were kind of in an old swamp, like a dried up swamp bottom, is where they were at. And it was a big cluster of trees, and I think there were 3 or 4 of them that had some persimmons on them. The rest of them weren't bearing any fruit or anything like that. But yeah, they were a little bit darker maybe than your like kind of light gray that you've kind of shown in some of the persimmons that you found.
Nick, can you think back to whether or not they were darker or lighter, the bark?
I have noticed there's a couple of different breeds of persimmon trees that are in some of these areas, but they're not in any swampy areas. That's the thing. They're more or less on just a hill, more of the hilly up higher elevation than others.
Interesting.
Some of them are darker though, but I haven't really paid as much attention to know which ones are the darker or the lighter bark that are the ones that they're attracted to. From what I have noticed, those some of the same ones that they are attracted to, if I look at the same type of breed of persimmon on another tree, they aren't even, there's no sign of them really even messing with them. Around.
Yeah.
Right. But, it could be off, but that's just what I've recognized.
The reason why I prompted that is because Bo Lice, who was on the podcast before, Southwest Georgia guy, he's been helping me kind of probe the Southwest Georgia area public land, and he told me that the 2 main varieties that he encounters are swamp and field persimmons, and that your swamp persimmons have a darker bark, and I've actually found that the leaves are a little bit different as well, but they've got a darker bark, and they are sweeter, but only produce about every, I think he said 3 to 4 years. They don't produce every year. And that they are favorable because they're more sweet, whereas the field persimmons, they produce every year, but they're less palatable. So I was curious if there was a correlation between the two, but it sounds like there may not be.
It's possible. I know there's areas where there's both of them and around the same, within the same vicinity.
Yeah.
And they're just spread pretty widely in some of these areas now. But there could be something there. I just started really keying in on the last couple of years. I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it.
I'm gonna have to keep watching for that now.
For sure. Yeah. Like I said, I sat on a patch of persimmons, and I'm not normally one to want to try to sit in one spot, but if it's happening there, it's happening there. I'm not going to go anywhere. I mean, right. I just seen countless amounts of deer. I mean, countless of opportunities that I had just on one little area. So there's got to be something to that.
Interesting. How fascinating.
Yeah. Makes sense. Unfortunately, where I'm at, there's not a lot of persimmons. I just happened to find one today, but I typically find maybe the males. I just never really find the ones producing fruit. I'll find persimmon trees that just never come upon one that's actually got fruit on it. And today I just happened to get a tip in an area and went over there to scout. It wasn't for persimmons. It was for something else. And I just happened to be walking through and I was like, whoa. There's some persimmons on those trees there. I was shocked.
Oh, yeah. Even in the area I'm at, I mean, there's persimmons everywhere, but it seems to be about 10 to 15% of them only produce.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's rare, but when you do find one that's producing and it's good. There's tracks around it throughout the summertime.
Yeah. I found, man, I bet you conservatively 30 to 40 persimmon trees this year up in southwest Georgia, and I found 3 that are holding fruit, and some of them are kind of holding fruit, and then one of them is just like balls to the wall. This thing, the limbs are bending, and I looked at my buddy Derek, who was scouting with me this past weekend. I was like, dude, the camera's going on this one.
Oh yeah,
because there's no way I'm not going to know what's coming to that tree.
Exactly. Oh yeah, if they're liking it, they'll be there.
Oh yeah, for sure. So,
Are there any other food sources?
Yep.
Since we're on food sources that you kind of key on besides just persimmon trees, because you mentioned oaks, where it was kind of something that you didn't really key in on. Was there anything else you key in on?
Yeah, if I'm not having too much luck around some of the persimmon patches that I identify earlier in the year or within the season, I'll try to venture on in some other areas because as the season goes on, I'll kind of pay attention to where people have been hunting that year and years past as well. But I'll try to kind of do a little bit of in-season scouting and find some decent oaks that might be dropping in some good funnel areas that I know of from years past. That's in the areas that I've hunted, many years. But I'll just kind of do a little quick run through of certain areas, and when I have time, and if I do find a good oak tree that looks like it's got a lot of action around it, a lot of either tracks or just the ground's kind of torn up a little bit where they've been kind of digging around, or I'll key on something like that. But there's just so much stuff to eat around here, man. You can't. It's hard to pinpoint one food source between not just the oak trees but just the browse all day. There's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. There's too much browse in Florida. I think they bed in areas where there's browse, and they just get up and move around in those little bit of areas throughout the day where they don't have to expose themselves as much in Florida.
In most cases, they don't even have to get up. They just reach over and don't even got to stand up.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Exactly. But
yeah, it's difficult. The food sources are everywhere, but it seems like, I don't know that ag would make it any better, though, to be honest with you, because then you'd have like this monstrous shift from the ag to other, like they would filter out from there, because that's what I ran into in southwest Georgia. Is when I was scouting out there, I'm basically looking for historical sign, rut sign, to try and figure out what the fall range is going to be. You want to find deer right now? Go walk a field edge with beans.
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere else even has deer tracks, but you can see rubs and scrapes and old sign that's there. So it's like there's this huge home range shift that happens. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's weird. I almost wish they would. I don't know. What do you think, Chase? You think agriculture would help you find deer?
It would help me find them certain times of the year.
Well, fair.
It all depends on what the ag field is. And I'll notice that because in one of the areas I hunt, they generally plant something during the summer, but it always comes down before the season starts.
Sure.
Like if they're planting watermelons, or even if they're planting corn or whatever, silage, whatever they're planting, it always comes down before I even get a chance to try to pattern the deer on those sources anyways. So I don't really account for any of them because it's always seems to come down like maybe a few weeks before the season starts, and then I'm like, okay, I prefer more. I mean, I like to scout kind of now, especially if it's areas that I don't know. But I feel like in Florida, a lot of your scouting is more in-season scouting and getting on hot sign when it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So on top of the added difficulty of finding preferred food sources, Nick, the majority of your good hunts tend to come off I don't want to say highly complicated, but a very odd quota system where you draw for 3 to 7 day hunts. How do you go about targeting different hunts when you're applying for them?
Well, I usually target the main areas that I frequent. The ones that are either close to home or that I know the best. The ones that I know I have the highest chance on, and I'm not saying that they're the best around. They're just the best that I have the most experience in. I will only use my preference points on 1 to 2, maybe 3 different areas. So on my first drawing, I'll only put in for those ones that I absolutely know I want to waste a preference point on. Other than that, I'll leave half of the field blank. I won't even fill it out on the first drawing. So therefore, if I don't draw it, I still got my preference points for the next year. And also, having plenty of friends that hunt the same area helps a lot, because you can always buddy with them. But that's been a big help, just trying to get into the areas that you want to be in, between having friends and kids as well to hunt with you. But me and my dad, we split up a lot, and between my cousin Adam and other people, we always frequent somewhat of the same areas. So we'll try to kind of one apply one year, one apply the next, where you both kind of have the hunt. So between a little small group of people, we all usually have the hunt. We'll just one person buddies with this person, and the next year, what I'm saying, just swap it around. But that's been kind of a way for us to kind of all kind of get to hunt these areas that we frequent. But when it comes to new areas, I usually just if it's areas that I don't frequent a lot, I'll just wait for the redraws, put in for them. And I'll try to target on the top of the list areas that look like they're, either I hear they're supposed to be good, or I have friends of mine that hunt there that swear they're good, shows me pictures. I'll put in for them and stuff like that. Other than that, I really don't. It's more or less a random draw like it is for anybody else. But I think saving your preference points for your top-notch places is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, are you doing that because for the quotas, there's generally an archery, a muzzleloader, and a general gun hunt. And I think for each one of those, you have different sets of preference points, right? So if you have different sets of preference points. So are you going, okay, well, if I'm going to target this area for archery only, or are you targeting for archery, muzzleloader, or gun? How do you pick what time of year you want to be on that quota hunt?
Well, that all depends on the rut in that area at that time, because every hunt, there's some of the areas that I hunt, their peak rut seems to be in archery, and then some seems to be more in muzzleload. And even if they're both in archery, they can be completely different times a year. So it just all depends. Like I said, I got 2 or 3 main core areas that I'll try to get the majority of the hunts in. So I'll just kind of get together with a few of the friends that hunt these areas and my dad and stuff like that, and we'll just kind of correlate, okay, you have the X amount of preference points for archery, you have X amount of preference points for gun, okay, I'll put in for this, you put in for that. And it just all kind of correlates with the rut in that specific area and what's going to be the best time to be there.
Gotcha. Well, what if you don't draw any of the quotas, or your buddies or dad or friends don't draw it? Do you have a backup plan for that?
I guess redraws. Just put in for it every single week. Every single week until maybe you or somebody draws it. Or you always got walk-on property to go on to fill in the gaps.
Right.
How are you balancing messing up your hunting areas during this process? Because I had a friend of mine reach out very concerned that I was out scouting some of these areas near the house here, but the hunting here doesn't kick off until October 19th or something this year. Mm-hmm. You get drawn for some of these limited entries. If your season's starting in September, October, it sounds like a lot of your scouting is going to be done reactively throughout the season. That's a lot of what you do. You obviously react to the best sign. But do you ever
Right.
do any scouting in the months leading up to that? And if you do, how do you balance making those scouting trips productive and yet not, unduly pressuring the deer that you're trying to get information on?
Okay, yeah. I try not to do a whole lot. I try to stay on the roads or boundary roads in most cases when I'm doing a lot of this stuff. When it's getting closer to season, I like to set my cameras where they're not too far off the. When I say roads, I'm not talking about the main road leading in there, but just kind of like your boundary. You know how they cut the fire breaks or the around the actual boundary lines of the properties and stuff like that. I try to keep them, on crossings and stuff like that, to where I'm not getting off the road to kind of detour the deer's natural movements and stuff like that.
Right.
But I'll definitely be out there. I mean, I'm usually out there at least every weekend this time of year up until about the last 30 days. I'll try to stay out of the main areas that I know I'm going to be in. But as far as keeping the pressure off of the deer, that's, like I said, just trying not to get in their natural movements. I mean, if you can help keep your scent down as much as you can, even though you're scouting, try not to, just walk all over God's creation out there. Just, I mean, put up a few cameras, get some inventory, and, it's going to change dramatically once the hunt opens, because I don't know if it's like that up there. I think it might be in Joe Bud, but usually, or not anywhere up in North Florida, anywhere Florida, but around here, most of the management areas, they allow you the day before to go in and scout. And I think we've talked about this before on here, but it just kind of really messes up all deer movement. So it's kind of hard to know exactly where they're going to be.
Sure.
But anything extra is just going to throw them off. I mean, even though somebody else might come in there the next day and completely walk the whole premises of where you're about to be, at least, you haven't. You know what I'm saying? Anything helps.
Right. Well, it's kind of hard with the system because a lot of the times you won't really find out till maybe a couple of months beforehand, and on the redraws you may not find out till maybe less than a month beforehand. So you got to get in there. I mean, there's kind of no way around it, especially if it's an area that you've never. Say it's an area that you've. Which I always like is every now and then they'll open up these management areas that haven't been hunted in a few years or something. They'll open up a piece of management land to hunt. And if you've never stepped foot on that piece of property, I would say, and you have less than a month away, you're going to have to get in there and walk around and do a lot of scouting, I would say. To me personally, I don't think it's going to throw them off that much for one person to be scouting a management area that might be, I don't know what the quota hunt management area is down there, maybe 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 acres. I think if you just go in there on a day or two whim and just go scout, like do a quick speed scouting mission and try to find some areas that you've already maybe cyber scouted prior, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
It's just difficult.
You also, I mean, I think it's kind of unfortunate because it's not one of those like strategies that you really want to bank on. But the fact also remains that on those hunts where it's only open for 5 days and 2 days before it for scouting, you're going to have this monstrous influx of people, and so just because you're in there and you may bump them 100 yards the other direction, Bubba could also be walking in there 30 minutes before daylight and kind of kick the deer up kind of per se. So I think it's weird because I think if you told a lot of people, a lot of well-to-do people that you're going to go into these areas 2 days before you're going to have only 5 days to hunt it, I think it would really wig people out. But that's just kind of Florida.
Right.
Exactly. It's a weird animal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you can put in as much effort as you want, but things can completely change a day or two before they hunt, and everything will be off course. I've seen it plenty of times because I do a lot of summer sitting in certain years. I'll go out there and I've watched deer on just crazy patterns. It's identical every single day. The minute that the season hits, I don't even see the deer. It's just you got trucks driving in that's not normally driving in, people walking around and stuff like that. It just completely puts everything off course. But yeah, like you said, if you don't have the time to prepare for it, if you get drawn for a hunt, and especially an area you do not know, The best thing you have is to go out there and scout it. Yeah, if you might bust something out of there, but your chances are better knowing where the deer are versus just guessing. So yeah, you are right, Jay. I mean, I completely agree with that. I guess I was kind of more or less in my mind going off of areas that I do know very well. So yeah, that would be about the best thing to do
Right.
if it's an area that's new.
Well, it definitely helps if you've got a good history with an area and know what they've done in years past. But I was mainly just talking about if someone applied for a quota, maybe first time or something like that, or they just apply for a new quota somewhere else because they want to go try somewhere else. It's kind of difficult when they give you like, okay, you can drive your vehicle in there a day before or something. Some of them kind of let you. I think you can use bikes or walk in the areas, but you can't drive in those areas before that. But that if you don't have a bike, some of those walks would be a long walks because of the limited access to it. So you're gonna just have to go in there maybe the day before and it scout and cover a lot of ground. I don't think that, and there's going to be other people doing that as well. And that's probably why it throws them for a loop because they're not used to having all that influx in.
That's another thing I use to advantage is the e-bike,
Right.
covering a lot more ground than you normally would be able to.
Oh yeah, yep. The e-bike definitely sounds appealing for sure. Mainly because you're not leaving any ground scent going in, and you can scout so much faster.
Right.
There's a bunch of walk-in areas like where I'm at, and they may be a mile and a half back where you can walk down these roads. And I'm like, well, shoot, if I had an e-bike, I would cut probably 45 minutes to an hour off my scouting time.
Right.
And I'm not leaving scent all over the roads and everything else walking down there. So I can definitely see how that they would probably help you. But how have you found that the e-bikes have made you more successful?
I believe, like you just mentioned, that it allows you to cover more ground in a less amount of time. Whereas before, I would just ride my bike. I'm more out to go now whenever I can just easily go out there very quickly. If I don't have the time during the week to really take a 5-hour bike ride, some of the stuff is miles back in where I go because the gate's closed. But, normally during hunting season, it's open, so it's not really much of a drive. But, if you want to go out there and you've got a specific area that's way far back, it's not that I'm lazy and don't want to go, but it's the matter of it's taking less time for me on a busy schedule. I can zip back there real quick, get what I got to get done, check more areas. Whereas, I got to wait for a day that I got plenty of time to get back there and take plenty of breaks because it's 200 degrees down here. So, I think that's the biggest thing is the time factor. It really takes a lot less time. You're able to get more done in the same amount of time if you have the time. But just able to go more often.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how about the you just mentioned the heat. Does it help with the perspiration and everything else? I'm sure it helps with that. So that's another bonus.
Right. Going into the stand whenever you're trying to keep your scent down as much as possible. Exactly. You keep from perspiring near as much. That's been a big factor as well. You're not sitting there drenched, even walking. I mean, heck, half the time just sitting here, you're sweating. So you've got a nice little cool breeze going as you're riding in, and you're not killing yourself to get there. And by the time you get there, you're nice and you just a nice little walk.
Yep.
Yeah,
awesome.
we don't do a whole lot of sweating here though, fortunately.
Uh-huh.
I talked to my buddy one time from Ohio, and it was like December, dude. I swear to God, it was like December. And I'm walking into Walmart, and he's like, "What you up to?" And I said, "Oh man, I'm in here getting some Thermacell cartridges." And he's like, "Dude, I haven't ran my Thermacell since like September." I was like, "Okay, what you want, a cookie?" Like, it's still 80 degrees midday sometimes up here,
Should be running almost year round down here.
Yeah. The further south you get, you're definitely
Sure.
running
Yeah.
Oh,
pretty much
yeah.
year round.
I remember.
Even when we got a nice little cool front come in, it's still you think that they're not going to be around, but all of a sudden here they come.
They're sluggish, and you can hear them coming.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jace.
No, I was just saying that makes it not. I mean, I'm kind of spoiled with my private areas that I hunt because I won't whip the thermocell out all season long, just because they're super dry areas. But then as soon as I hit public land, any of the public land spots I hit, then I'm whipping like dueling thermocells out. Heck, I might even spray down, man, because I ain't down with the mosquitoes.
Oh yeah.
So I may even spray myself down with whatever to off or whatever, and just hope that the wind's in my favor for the most part in some of those areas. Because sometimes even the thermocells ain't doing anything, and you're just getting tagged.
Oh yeah. I know. I usually soak my clothes in permethrin.
Yeah.
And use the thermocell in conjunction. If you don't, man, even with the thermocell, like you said, the lightest little breeze is like it just carries it right on away from you, and they're right in there anyways.
Yeah. Sawyer makes this stuff called picaridin or something like that that I just saw the other day, and it's supposed to be their version of like mosquito repellent without any smell. So
okay.
I don't know. Chase, are you familiar with it?
I think I've heard of it. My buddy that I'm going out to Iowa with and I hunt with down here, he mentioned something the other day of some type of lotion that you put on.
What?
That's supposed to combat the mosquitoes. Yeah, he said because he went and hunted a quota hunt down in Zone A, I think last week. And he said if as long as he had the thermocell going and he had put that whatever that lotion was on that he had. He said that it was definitely much more bearable down there. So I'll ask him what that lotion was that he was putting on. He said the only area he kind of got tagged was an area that he couldn't reach with his back. So I'm like, well, if you got a buddy like, hey man, you get my back, I get your back type thing. But I'd be interested in that because he didn't mention any that it smelled weird or anything like, and he was hunting in shorts and a t-shirt.
No.
Oh yeah.
With that, so just because it's South Florida.
Yeah.
but he also mentioned that there weren't any ticks or chiggers down there. So that just blew my mind because he was scouting and doing everything with the short sleeve shirt and shorts down there. So
no chicks or tigers, huh?
That's what he said. He said he didn't pick up any of it while he was down there.
Oh, nice.
And,
I can
and
deal
he
with
scouted
that.
a ton. Yeah. Woo.
I don't know.
For sure.
If you had to make me pick between the two, I'm definitely going ticks and chiggers.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just put the permethrin on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a no-brainer for me. But yeah.
Right. Okay, Nick. Let's kind of go into, so you've got the quotas that you want. Well, let's say this is a perfect year. You've got the quotas that you wanted to get, or your buddies or your friends got the quotas. How do you go about? Are most of your quotas down there are they 3 days or 4 days down there? And if they are, how do you make the best of that time?
Yeah, most of them are 3 days. I'll tell you, the number one thing is staying in the stand as much as possible.
Right.
I think I mentioned it earlier, just trying to put yourself in the situation where majority of people are not.
How do you figure that out? Because on these systems, like people are bringing their stand. Most of the time, people are bringing their stand, whether they're climbers, saddles, or maybe they brought in a stand the day before. So how do you know where people are going to be hunting to avoid that pressure?
Well, the first day, I usually just kind of go out on a whim. I might sit up in the morning and just in a halfway spot that I think is somewhat decent, but I'm not going to go into anything great. This is a new area. If, like say you cyber scouted or just kind of ran through glance, I'll just kind of throw up in an area. Then I'll just kind of spend the rest of the day just trying to see where people are parked at. And then maybe, a lot of people around here put up flagging tape and you just kind of mark off these areas and hope that there's nobody, without, outside of those areas, and just kind of drive around and just kind of get a better look on the area and where everybody might be. You're not going to know exactly where they're going to be, but just try to stay, away from, and then you just kind of go back through, look at your maps, maybe, if you have that ability, and, look at what might look good for funnels and just areas that might hold deer from what you can tell from aerial footage, and go scout those areas in the middle of the day on your first day. That's what we've usually done.
Do you find that there's a certain thing that maybe the pressured deer do, like relative to the areas that you hunt? Like, do they seek swamps at that point, or are they just? Is it still just a random? They just get kind of scattered all over the place, or do they kind of just go bunch up in certain areas when they know that there's hunting pressure?
I used to think it usually been they used to go to the thickest, darkest, deepest places, the wettest places that's hardest to get to. But in the middle of the season, I've jumped them up on the side of the road and underneath an oak tree. There's
Right.
a low-hanging oak tree. So I just think they just kind of more or less scatter and go to this place that specific deer thinks is safe. And a lot of people think, and I used to be the same way, they think a lot harder than they should about where the deer actually are. I killed every single deer this past season right off of a road. I mean, I'm not talking about a main road, just an actual access road for forestry, but deer crossroads, they're going to be around roads, and I think they're a lot closer than what you would think. And this is all throughout season, not just beginning of the season, middle season. It's all throughout season. So I think they more or less just scatter and go to areas that they feel safe, thicker areas for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Last year, that buck that I killed on that quota hunt, he was with that doe, and like you mentioned, they were probably bedded off the road, maybe 60, 70 yards off of a road. It's not a road you could drive, but it was just a road that you could walk on to access areas. But they were kind of bedded in an area where there wasn't too many trees that someone could choose to hunt from.
Right.
They were kind of in a bunch of short pine trees where probably, like you mentioned, got overlooked by people, and there just wasn't a bunch of pressure in that area.
Right. Yeah, they're going to go to those areas that just less amounts of pressure for sure.
I think also the deer, I've noticed that they adapt to pressure in very almost predictable ways. Like, I think every property is a little bit nuanced, but in properties where there's a lot of through traffic throughout the year, they're very close to the roads, like you said. Those areas tend to be areas that get a lot of sunlight, which there's probably a lot of food near them. If you think about it, the oak trees probably get a little more sunlight, so maybe they're more prone to produce. But, last year I hunted a piece of property and I killed my doe. Dude, I'm talking like 40 yards off of a drivable road. Anybody who drove up and down that road saw me hanging out of that tree, and it was really weird. It went so far against who I was as a hunter up until that point, but I had been going really deep, and I found those deer right there off the freaking road. And when Chase came up, not long after, a couple months afterwards, we did a late season hunt. There were a lot of guys hunting that area, but they didn't go very deep. And just last weekend, we went to that same area, and me and my buddy pushed in a little bit deeper, and maybe 150 yards off the road where it got just started to get a little thicker, rubs everywhere. Just rubs everywhere. I mean, I bet you we saw 20, 25 different rubs in a trail that was beat down so badly, I put a camera up. So, I think that the deer, if they want to be in an area, they're not going to go far from it. They just might shift to the nearest security cover that isn't getting beat down by, a Florida cracker.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I think on some of these hunts, you can, when you're doing your scouting, you can just look at certain areas and go, yep, somebody's going to set up here. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to set up here. Somebody's going to set up here. And then that's when you're kind of like, okay, these are obvious spots where people are going to set up. Then you can just go ahead and mark those on your list going into that first day. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned, you can mark it off. First day, I'm not going to try to hunt here at all because I'm pretty sure someone's going to be here. And then you mentioned come out, do some human scouting and figure out where they're at. And you go, oh, shoot, no one's over here. Mm-hmm. There's no sign of anybody over here. Maybe I'll hit this area up tomorrow because I thought it looked really good. But I just assumed that everyone else would think it looked really good as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is a lot of them hunt out of climbers, but I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Have you noticed that they chew up the same tree every time they go in there? Like,
oh yeah.
Like there's sometimes I'm like, man, somebody has to hunt this, and then I'll spin around and find a pine tree the base of it will just be like it shed bark, like the tree just like had mange or something, and it's just shedding all of its bark. And it's like, okay, well, somebody hunts there every Saturday and Sunday morning.
Right.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can pick them out very easily most of the time.
I mark those trees.
Yeah.
It's usually somewhere where they can see a pretty good little ways as well.
Yeah.
Nice open, pretty hammock or something like that. Yeah, that's usually where you'll find them.
Yeah, well, and there's oftentimes a lot of deer sign near there too. I mean, it's not, they're not necessarily bad spots, but a smarter deer isn't going to step out during daylight there. That's for sure.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And they could be making that sign at nighttime.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing about sign is unless you got cameras there running, you have no idea when they're making that sign there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You can pretty much might as well just mark off all those areas that are that wide open and stuff like that. They're not going to be there just hanging out.
No.
Field edges and stuff like that. I have found some pretty good luck on some of that sign that's within thick cover as well. But anything out there in the open, might as well mark that off.
When you go to some of these areas, if the sign isn't what you hoped it to be, or you're not seeing animals, do you ever back off and do like observation hunts to try and survey some of these areas? Maybe get way up high in a tree and just watch to pick out movement.
Yes, I actually do that quite a bit, and that's actually kind of how I had my accident last year. I've been well known to free climb trees, a lot of these thick oak trees and stuff like that. I'll just try to get as high as I can. Just ridiculous. And it's not the smartest thing in the world, but I can get to a good vantage point and get way up in a tree and just see for quite a ways and try to just see where they're moving through, how they're working around. I kind of, if I have an idea on where people are hunting, I'll actually watch deer go around where these people are, and then they'll just kind of help you get in the right areas where you need to be.
Right.
Try to get on top of them.
Yeah, that's I think I need to do more observation hunts. That's something that Chase has always pushed me to do, but it's I don't know, it's hard not to want to like feel like you're close for the kill.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're pulling yourself out of the game, but
especially when you only got 3 days.
Right, that's the thing. Yeah.
Right. It's more difficult on the quota hunts
Yeah.
to probably do that
For sure.
than it is if you're doing it on walk-in. And you got the whole season to do that. But hey, it paid off for you last year, Walter. So
It did. Exactly.
I don't know why every hunt for you should be an observation hunt now.
I don't know if you guys have experienced the same thing, but sometimes I'm doing observation hunts and I'll have one walk right underneath me.
But that's what he's talking about.
I guess I didn't catch.
Yeah. I mean, mainly because it's probably just a spot that gets overlooked. Like you said, it's just an area you're like, oh, I'm going to sit way back here and look. And then the deer's kind of been pushed in those areas. And you're like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
All right, I'll take this free gift right here.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I think we get too easily get kind of like overthinking things. And there was no hard mass last year. And there's this big open grassy area full of forbs and blackberry and greenbrier and all kinds of stuff. And I'm getting frustrated. And Chase is like, dude, just set up and watch from a distance. And dude, that freaking doe came from like 125 yards away on a beeline straight to my tree. I could not believe what happened, man. But then when I started looking around and I watched the footage, she was eating the whole way through. I was sitting in the middle of a friggin' food plot. I didn't even realize it, like,
oh yeah,
it's, I don't know. Sometimes it's easier than we make it out to be. And sometimes you just get lucky.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's more or less the fact that we just think too hard about it.
Sure.
Because it seems to be the times that I just kind of go throw up a stand somewhere. That's when it usually happens. Yeah.
Well, luck can run both ways, and I'm curious if you'd be willing to share. I'm sure it's painful still, but you have what has to be the most unlucky of stories I have ever heard of when it comes to public land deer hunting.
Of course. Yeah. I'd be glad to share it.
So.
But that being said, anything I say is just what my perspective was of the situation.
Sure.
I wasn't a fly on the tree of the person who I believe done what was done. So I'm not saying that this is exactly what happened, but that's just my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, some of this is what it is, and then some of it I think is probably speculation to what happened.
Right.
But I don't even really know where to start with this. But was this one of your quota hunts?
Yeah, it actually was my third quota hunt of the season.
Okay.
Last year.
Okay. Gosh, I guess I can give you the floor. Do this. Set the stage. Tell us about this hunt. Kind of tell everybody why you picked the area you did, and then just kind of take the story and run with it. Because I'm just going to make this more difficult than it needs to be.
Got plenty of time, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and start back from the first time I guess I could say we, as me and my dad, caught a glimpse of this deer. This was back in 2017. It was on a trail camera, and he immediately got the name Gimpy because he had a bad right foot. He was limping like crazy. I don't know if he got it caught in a trap, snake bite. I don't know what it was. But it was a deer we called Gimpy. We saw him, or what we think to have saw him, on the hoof a few times out there in an area that I've hunted since I don't even know how old I was. We've always hunted this area. It's real close to home. But anyways, so fast forward to last year, 2019. We had only gotten one more picture of him during the 2018 off season, the summer of 2018, and never saw him during that hunting season. But I knew the area that he frequented in because I had gotten, obviously the first video and then a picture of him the next year. And I kind of had words of the 10 point in the area that had been spotted and stuff like that. And I just kind of knew the natural travel corridors of good mature bucks of that area over the past 15 years of hunting out there. I just kind of knew which way the good bucks kind of stayed. I knew the doe bedding areas, and I started seeing this nice track throughout the summer. So I keyed in on it. I never put a camera up there because it just seems to never, in the past I've done it and it just didn't, the track disappeared as the season came. So it's just kind of like, maybe I'll hunt here. He might be still coming through here as the season progresses because it seems like as soon as the hunters come in there, he's gone. But I had a buddy that hunted. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go throw up over here and maybe something will happen. Well, he slipped in on me right at daybreak. And it was one of those situations where he walked through a small little opening, like literally less than 10 yards in front of me. I was just in some thick stuff. He walked right in front of me and never even had the chance to pick up my bow and shoot him. So I sat there, ended up killing another buck that same hunt. And fast forward to the next weekend, I killed that buck Sunday, the buck before. I killed him on a Sunday. I just went ahead and left my set. I had the next hunt. I said, you know what? This is pretty much scratched off because that buck ran exactly to the bedding area that I expected any other deer and doe and everything like that would come into heat. They'd be in this area. So I was like, you know what? I'll just hunt here next Friday morning and then move my stuff. And, usually after that, after you put that much scent, dragging a deer out and stuff, usually the sightings go down a little bit. But I guess the feed tree was pretty hot. Here comes the next Friday morning. I'm sitting there and a little spike comes through and kind of filming him, getting some B-roll footage and stuff. And then a doe comes through from another direction. I'm filming her, and I don't know what in the world made me look. But I looked the direction she came, and here I see this this huge buck just standing here in the bushes, just staring that direction. So immediately I recognized the rack, and luckily I had about 15 to 20 minutes to calm down because that's about how long it took him to finally make his way through. And then, luckily, I had the camera ready to go. Because I was obviously filming the doe and stuff like that. I watched her come through, and she kind of came through at an angle from almost directly in front of me to my right a little bit, straight to like behind me to the left. So I didn't know where she was because I was kind of in like a sable palm. So I had stuff all hanging behind me, oaks, little small short oaks all behind me. I couldn't see where the heck she was. I had my bike right underneath my tree. Luckily, there were some like short palmettos around the base of my tree where they couldn't really see the bike or anything like that. Plus, I threw some on top of it. So, in my back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, great, this doe is going to come around here and bust me. She's going to see my bike. She's going to watch me draw or something. So I'm starting getting nervous again. This deer I've been hunting for years is finally making his way in here to me. And he's like a ghost. I hadn't been able to get on top of him for season after season. And yeah, it's like a roller coaster, up, down, and he just stops. I'm like, oh, he's not going to come in. He's not going to come in. Finally, he works his way in. And then I pull back, and he stops facing me. But the weekend prior, or 2 weekends prior to that, I had a deer that ducked a little bit on me, and I had a marginal shot. It hit him in kind of like the lower spine area, and it was a horrible situation. The deer ended up living that I'm aware of. So that's the thing that went through my mind. He stopped. He's facing me. I was going to shoot him right down through the chest, but I'm like, man, I don't want to hit something and, the same situation happen again. So I waited a second, then he moved, turned broadside, and as I'm trying to adjust the shot and move up to his front shoulder where I wanted to be, it went off a little bit too early. But I should have stopped him, but at 10 yards, a deer that suspicious in my mind on public land, a deer that's hard to even get a glimpse of, I'm thinking if I make any noise right now, this deer is gone. You know what I'm saying? He was on 10. That deer, it took him forever to come after that doe, even, but so I didn't want to make any noise. I just tried to follow him through, and I ended up going off a little too soon. That's where the name Gut Shot kind of came in. But no, it wasn't quite as far back as what it looks like in some of the footage. It was a lot farther back than what I would particularly want to aim for, but it was probably around back of the liver area. But it was a complete pass-through. I knew the deer was going to die. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I went back to the truck. I viewed the footage on my laptop. I blew it up to where I could really see what happened. As soon as it happened, I seen the blood spot as he jumped off. He mule kicked and he ran. I'm thinking, oh man, that was a horrible shot. I need to give this deer some time. Went back, viewed footage, like I just said, and then I went and I had a buddy out there hunting with me at the time. And so I circled around, and as I circled around, I noticed that there was somebody hunting on the other side of the block as me. I said, oh, great, that's the same direction that deer ran to. Like, well, man, what's the chances of that? So I was like, well, I'm going to go get so-and-so, because he wasn't familiar with the area. He's actually out of Lakeland. So I went around to get him. So I was like, hey, I shot a deer, blah, 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 whatever. Let's go try to find an arrow. At this time, it had been 2 hours or so, hour and a half to 2 hours. And so we circle around, come back around the back way, and try to look for the arrow. Never could find the arrow. I blood trailed. I guess I left out. When I first got down 30 minutes afterwards, I blood trailed into the block a little bit, about 50 yards or so, 50, 60 yards, and it wasn't the best blood trail. So I backed out. And it was, I don't know if you guys have ever blood trailed through an oak hammock where it's nothing but like the red and brown leaves on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
But as blood dries in that type of setting, it gets hard to see, especially when it's not like a gushing blood trail.
Right.
So if it's a faint blood trail when there's nothing for that blood to catch on but old like live oak leaves that are just really reddish, brownish, it's almost the same exact color. So when it was fresh, it was fairly easy to see. But as I was going in there, I heard something get up that I couldn't tell if it was something that got up. A squirrel ran off. I couldn't tell what it was. So I just kind of backed out. I was like, I'm going to give it some time. So anyways, I went around and we ended up looking for the arrow. Couldn't find the arrow. So I was like, well, maybe it stayed in the deer. It disappeared through the deer. Thought it was a pass through. Could never find it. Could be under the grass. It was in a grassy area, whatever. I just kind of threw it aside. It's like, well, we'll go back to the truck for about another hour and a half, and give it a little bit more time. Then we'll go and just kind of grid search the area and see if we can't, pick him up. And about the time I made it back to the truck, I get a call from a buddy. So I noticed that truck was gone as I circled back around. I was like, okay, well, that truck's gone now. Maybe they went to lunch. And I don't even remember what time it was. It was probably 10, 11 o'clock at that time. A buddy called me. He was like, hey, man, I just seen a truck leave from back there. They had a giant buck in the back of their truck. I said, really? Like, what is the chances of that? I was like, holy cow. I was like, man, there's no way. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go up to the check station. I'm just going to see. So we take a little ride up there, and I get out and I walk up, and because at this particular area, they always take pictures of especially the bucks. Every single buck, they'll take a picture. If you don't want the picture, they'll take the picture of the deer itself, not with you with it, but most of the time it's you with the deer. I think they do that at Joe Butt, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Only if it's a good one or something.
Yeah, it's got to be a booner.
Okay. Well, this area they do it with just about every deer that comes through there. But anyway, so I knew it was going to be up there, so I was like, oh, I'm going to go check it out. So as soon as I walk up there, I'm like, oh, man, my heart dropped. I was like, oh, man, you got to be kidding me, man. And at that time, I was like, man, well, that's great. I'm glad somebody, if I didn't kill it, I'm glad somebody put it out of its misery. And then they're like, man, there was another wound on that deer, and they acted kind of funny about it. I said, what? I was like, well, I got video footage of me shooting that deer. So I said, what do you mean they acted funny? Well, there was wounds on it, and we noticed there were, this is the biologists that were telling me this, we noticed there was other wounds on it, and they were like, oh, that's old wounds. That's battle wounds or just something like that. They were just acting really funny about it. This is coming from them. I wasn't there. But anyways, I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Well, I want to know what happened. I want to know where that deer went. I want to know what happened. Now, and also they said that the wound where they killed him, it was in the neck. And they said it didn't look like a normal neck wound to me. I said, really? They said, no, it looked like they slit it with a knife. So then, in my head, I'm thinking, well, God dang, man, maybe they finished it off or something. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe they found it dead, cut its throat or something. You know what I mean? In my head, I just want to know what happened. So we went back out there. I just kind of blood trailed around. I continued the blood trail that I started to begin with, and it just it was hard to see at that point because the blood was dried up. It wasn't a very big blood trail to begin with, but it was just drying up like crazy, and I wasn't having any success. But where I stopped, the last part I found blood, I just happened to look over and I found a ladder stand. I was like, well, obviously whoever was in this stand, it ran right by them. So I started looking around a little bit, and then all of a sudden I see soybeans everywhere. I mean, pounds of soybeans. So then I'm starting to get heated. It's like, it's one thing for it to be a fishy situation, but then I'm finding bait within 75, 80 yards from where I'm hunting. It's just kind of like, I don't want to be mixed up with this.
Yeah.
No, at that point, I'm just curious. I'm like, okay, I'm an avid hunter. I try to be as legal as I can. Here these guys are baiting, and it's already fishy that they ended up with a deer that I shot. It wasn't the best shot, but God forbid, I know I killed the thing. It would have died eventually, but here they are hunting over bait. So I just got aggravated. So I called the FWC, and I didn't know who it was at the time. And I called FWC. I said, hey, I'm here to report a bait site. I found bait, within the vicinity close to where I'm hunting, and I don't feel comfortable with it being here. I mean, heck, if I'd have hunted 20, 30 yards closer, I'd have been accused of hunting over bait. So I'm like, gosh, I don't want that around me. Yeah. So they came out like a day or so later, and they came and they checked it all out. And by that time, I had followed in another trail of flagging tape shortly around the corner from there and came up on another stand that was loaded down with bait. And so when he got there to check out the one, I said, well, hey, after I called, I found this stand here, and it's loaded down with bait. So he came over there, he checked it out. He's like, you got to be kidding me. He was pretty ticked off about the situation. I said, well, we'll try to figure out who it is. So fast forward, I think it was the end of that hunt, the third day. The truck that I saw parked over there was who I came to suspect who it was. They told me, hey, if you see so-and-so show back up, give us a call. We'll come out. And that's exactly what happened. They came on a Sunday. They ended up showing up out there and confronting them. And of course, one of them admitted to it. The one who ended up with the deer did not admit to hunting over bait and had a big what seemed to me to be fabricated story about how he shot the deer through the bushes at 45 yards, walking away in the back of the neck, came out the front of the neck, standing in a palmetto tree, chasing does after I shot him through the guts. That was the story. So to me, it's just bizarre. I've never seen a deer chase a buck chase a doe after being, a pass-through shot through whether it's the vitals or the guts or whatever. But, it beats me. But, that's about the end of it there. That's about where it left off. I mean, there was just nothing that they could really do about it at that point. But I mean, you ask me, there's no way to prove anything, but there was enough sign for me to believe that things went way differently than what they were accused to have went.
That sucks, dude.
For sure.
That royally blows. Like, that is just, man. I mean, it's just it's like salt in an open wound, right? Like, for him to walk away potentially with your deer, then to find out the baiting was happening on top of that. I mean, that's got to be like a why do I even bother kind of situation, I mean, you're doing everything you can the right way, and
Right.
Yeah, I'd be pissed. You're a better man than me. You probably already let it go.
Do what now?
I said you probably already like grieved through the process and cycled through all 7 steps a couple times, but I'd still be like, Chase would be like, Walter, come on, you've got to let this go.
Oh, trust me, man. I think about it almost every day.
Yeah.
It gets to me. But my biggest thing was, I was like, well, it ain't about getting this deer in my hands. I really don't care. It's just the fact of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, they need to be fined or whatever. It's like they don't need to be doing that crap around here.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But hopefully one of them learned.
Yeah. For sure. It's a good story to tell, but it's not an awesome situation. But hopefully they get their stuff right, man. I mean, that's one of those stories that you're always going to be the life of the party when somebody's like, oh well, I missed this buck. Oh well, I shot a Pope and Young white oak tree in Kentucky. Like, hold my beer. I shot the best deer of my life, and someone else stole it and was hunting over soybeans on public land. The whole conversation is going to stop right there. So you got yourself a Pope and Young story, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, for sure, man, for sure. That is for sure.
Oh man,
and it couldn't have happened any better, man. It just the way everything went through.
Yeah.
I mean, the deer walked in within 10 to 15 yards. I had it all recorded. It just ideal situation. And then, go from cloud 9 to just hit the ground. I mean, actually literally hit the ground. But
I'm sure. Do you have any bucks or anything that you're going to be after this year on any of your quota hunts?
Oh, yeah. Actually, there is several in the same area that are actually looking pretty good this year. So we are en route to possibly another good season.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But that all depends. I'm pretty sure this particular area got put on the pin got dropped on Facebook a time or two. So we'll see how that plays out.
Chase, I don't remember getting that pin. Do you?
No. I don't look at any of the Central Florida pages for the most part, or wherever the pin would be.
It was all over a couple of those Facebook forums there for a while, man. I'm like, oh man, I didn't say a word, but it was like, oh man, can this thing please just die?
Nick every day is waking up and reporting posts, hoping they get deleted.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, holy cow.
Oh man.
But.
Well, dude,
like I said, it is what it is.
I'm hopeful that we can all get up and hunt one day. I think it would be an absolute blast to travel across the state and hunt some different areas, because really September and October, heck, even for me, November doesn't really hold anything in the state of Florida. So I'm looking to add to my season, and then maybe we can end up doing like a late season deer camp as well.
Oh, yeah. Hey, man, I'm down for any of that for sure.
Yeah.
And we only got 31 days here in Zone C, so I'm happy as can be.
Yeah.
Counting down the days.
Well, hold on. I'll pull up my calendar and tell you how long I have, because it's even better.
I'm sure it's even less.
I've got, at the time of recording this, 17 days, 7 hours, 38 minutes, and 36 seconds.
Oh, you lucky duck, man. Lucky duck.
So,
that's in Georgia as well, right?
Yeah. So,
man.
It's going to be fun, man. I can't wait. It's going to be a good year, especially with that persimmon crop. But, dude, why don't you tell everybody where they can find all this footage?
Well, if you guys want to be bored to death, you guys can always look up Heart of Florida Outdoors. It's nothing big as we speak, but it will be before too long. The Heart of Florida Outdoors on YouTube and Instagram. As of right now, that's all I got for you.
Hart, right?
Yes, yeah. Hart, which actually, if anybody wants a little backstory on why what the Hart, because everybody's like, well, you didn't spell that right, man. Did you spell check that first? It's like, well, actually, it's a family. It's within the family of mine. It's a last name within the family. It means a lot to me. That's kind of where it came about, and obviously trying to be a little different than just the run-of-the-mill. Whereas when you search for it, was trying to come up with something a little bit different. But, hey, whatever works, man. Whatever works.
That's it, man. That's it. Well, dude, I appreciate you taking time out your evening and joining us. And soon we're going to have deer camp, and I'm excited,
Sweet.
Dude.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man. All right, guys, so that's it for this week's episode. No matter what you do, no matter how long it is until your deer season's about to kick off, do us one favor. Get outside and enjoy the great outdoors.